Good morning. I'm really happy to be here today. There are many of you actually who have had more deeper experiences with your parents and actually worked harder than I have in the church. But I would like to share some of my experiences and by showing a brief history of the American movement. I am a Navy brat, which means my dad was in the Navy, I was born in it and raised in it. And basically I want to join very early in my life to be in the Navy. But I was a bit too young, my dad says, so I had to wait a little bit. So we moved to many different places and eventually settling in San Francisco. My best friend in high school and college was a Japanese American named Michael Ozaki. And he eventually now is in Los Angeles, but he taught many things to me especially about searching internally, not just, looking at the outside world, but finding out more internal guidance and everything through his life. So through him, I was able to understand many things. Now, my favorite subject in school, in college, was history. But as you know, there's not so much future in the history, so I had to eventually be going to the Navy because my draft number was up, and I was able to serve there. I was a radium in the Navy out of Pearl Harbor, and I eventually went to Vietnam. But my search for the internal guidance, it was still strong. So I wanted to search for like a religious philosophy, but not religion per se. So when I went back to San Francisco, I went to Berkeley to look up my friend, and while there, I saw this group of people. And I said, oh, that's an interesting sign. So I took a photo of it. I didn't know who they were or anything. I just wanted to take their picture. So I went back. Eventually, I couldn't find a book for what I wanted to do there. So I went to San Francisco main library to find some more books. And there was this girl who was standing in front of the door with a big smile on her face and stopped me. And she told me that, well, I have a new religious philosophy you can search for. So she invited me to lunch, and I realized when they prayed that this was a church. So she asked me to come back that night and to listen to a lecture, a presentation. So I went outside. So I told her I'll try. But I went outside, and a voice came to me, just like in the movies. You better check this out. It's going to change your life. So I went back that night, and much to her surprise, I came. So she was really happy, and I sat through the lecture. And he was from Korean. His name is Papa Sanche, and I couldn't understand a word he said. Nothing. So she took me into the kitchen right after that and taught me the whole lecture again. And I thought, okay, that's good. Okay, fine. What do I do next? She says, well, I talked to her a few more times for the following week, but then I had to go back to Hawaii where my ship was. So that's what it looked like back in. I wish I looked at now, but my wife is telling me. But I had to go back overseas again. I had to go back to Vietnam and eventually to the Yom Kippur War to partake in that. But when I came back, everything was changed. The center had changed to a new place. Bruce Brown and Kamel Akihito were the leaders there. We're very busy now because Reverend Suda was bringing his IODBC team to Hawaii to finish up the last of the 32-city tour, which two parents were doing. And so I helped with some of the preparation for that. And this is my first suit, except when I was 5 years old, at the reception. So actually during the day of the banquet, a huge thunderstorm hit. And rivers were going down, houses were going down the rivers, cars, everything. And we were very worried if people would show up for this banquet. Eventually, it turned out to be the biggest banquet of the whole 32-city tour. Father was very happy about it, and I don't remember his speech at all, but I remember the joke he had at the very beginning, and it's very interesting. Now, Father, Mother, and Dr. Pak, Bohi Pak, they were driving along the highway, and Father tried to pronounce the names. Kamehameha Highway. Oh, no, Father, said Dr. Pak. This is Kamehameha. That's how they pronounce the names here. So then Father was looking more down the street. Yes, I'm going to find another one like this. Oh, Pipolini. Oh, no, Father, that's a pipeline. So I remember that one joke. So during that time also, we got it? No, wrong one. Bingo. during the time, there was no nonstop flights from New York to Korea, so they had to stop by in Hawaii all the time to refuel. And they would just step out of the plane for a few hours, and the members would come and be able to see them and make them happy and everything before they went off. So eventually, I got out of the Navy in 1975, and I immediately went to Berrytown, New York, for training, 40-day training, and then eventually 120-day training. I still have my camera, so during the Children's Day ceremony in 1975, the photographers saw, oh, you have a camera. We have this person speaking over here. We don't have time. We're doing all this other stuff. Can you help out? So I did. So I got my camera, took a picture of the speaker who was outside, and then I was able to take a picture of this person who was actually Father's first disciple, Dr. Wonpil Kim. And years later, I realized that this photograph was on the cover of his book, A Father's Life Course. And so that was my first cover, but I didn't know it for a few more years. So then in 1980, I joined the New Feature Photo because one, they loved my camera and my lenses, but two, because I was also trainable, so they wanted me to come along. So for the next 33 years, able to travel many different places, 54 countries, 48 states, go with two parents, many places like Brazil, and be able to have many experiences with them. So I wanted to now sort of begin a brief history of the American church so that you can understand more of the background of Father's history here. Father and Mother came to, first time was 1965, where they established, of course, many of the holy grounds. They wanted to see many people. One, of course, was President Eisenhower, and of course, it wasn't just a simple, cordial visit, but actually to tell President Eisenhower the dangers of communism and to become very strong about communism. So President Eisenhower was very agreeable about that. And of course, in 1971 is when the official arrival came, with the members were there with signs, banners, and waving. But they didn't come here for sightseeing. They came here to begin a movement of action. And so they started many activities. One was the One World Crusade that toured America. But it wasn't just spreading the word, but it also was a battle between God and Satan. So as the membership grew, the campaigns grew, like this campaign on the actual steps of the Capitol building about communism, dangers of communism. And of course, Father he wanted to have speaking tours, so he began to have the first speaking tours. This is Reverend Paul Werner watching the vans that would go out throughout all 50 states to begin preparing for each state. And of course, the first ones were at Lincoln Center and Carnegie Hall. And of course, when all these activities were happening, the photographic department, film departments had to be created to cover all these activities. And these are actually the photographers from the 1970s who photographed all of these speeches and events and everything. Some of them you know. And that guy in the tie, I was just visiting, helping out, but I'm the only one wearing a tie. I was still an MFT. But Father really also wanted to meet many of the dignitaries. This is Reverend Dr. Walter Fauntroy, who helped with Martin Luther King. And he's still with us today. He's one of the main supporters. He's been with us like 40 years. He's a very great person. All this around this time also, the true families started to come. They arrived. They were so happy to be reunited with their parents again. And the greatest thing they enjoyed, first thing in America, was McDonald's. They love McDonald's burgers. Now, of course, with all the activities, we had to also have two things happen. One, members need training to become better people, to strengthen themselves, but also to make money for the activities. And so those who brought in great results were honored by True Parents directly. And of course, True Parents would visit many of the centers, all 50 states, to inspire the members, to give them words of encouragement, and to get feedback from them and strengthen themselves as well. In 1973 to 74, actually President Nixon was still in trouble with the media and the Congress. So Father wanted to keep America strong, united with him, so that he opened up the Forgive, Love, Unite campaigns with a full-page article in all the newspapers with campaign tours around all 50 states. And the biggest one was at Washington, D.C., which members wore signboards that were, I'm praying and fasting for this person or this senator or this congressman. And President Nixon was so happy about that, he invited troop parents into the White House to talk. And Father said, be strong, don't give up, be strong. But unfortunately, he wasn't strong. Now during this time, there's witnessing campaigns were going on out in the street and bringing more members, which means also more workshops were taking place all over the country. Leaders were coming out more and more. Father was training them and encouraging them and sending them out. Then the next big campaign was Madison Square Garden in 1974. The whole movement was activated for this. We all came eventually to, I was still in the Navy at the time, but I took a 1 month leave off and I flew to Los Angeles and we drove all the way across country, fundraising, preparing. And I went to, when I arrived here, I was sent to Lexington Avenue between 57th and 69th Street, 67th Street. And one person was walking up the street with a girl in each arm, and I recognized the person very easily. So I talked to him that I was in the Navy, I was on leave helping out with this campaign, and he was actually a submariner in World War II, so we had some kind of connection. He was wondering why I was doing this, because I was trying to save America and make America strong again. So eventually, in the morning, I called the PR people, and they went over this person, and this person's name was Mike Wallace of CBS News. Basically, he was CBS News at the time. So eventually, he was able to have an interview, direct interview with troop parents, and cover the event itself. I learned later it wasn't a very good interview, I heard, but still, the chance was there. And of course, Father's main goal was to have so overcrowded, the doors would be breaking open, trying to get in, everything. And it was a huge success. But I remember one thing, up in the upper left in the corner, that's where I was. They asked me to be like a little security guard, so I asked me to stay there, and I was sort of watching the people, making sure nothing happened. But I remember the first thing, there was so much chaos and noise there, that Father, before he began speaking, he said, can I sing your song? So he sang a song, and everything quieted down, became calm, and he was able to go into a speech. Now, did Father have a victory? He sure was. He had a home run with it. So during this time, he also, in 1971, he began conference making. Well, first was the Professors World Peace Academy, and also the science conferences, the International Conference of Unity of Sciences, which he wanted all these Nobel Prize winning scientists to come together, the different fields, and to strengthen their fields and solve the world problems based on absolute values. Everything was on absolute values. So when Father spoke to them, it was always centered on that. And of course, during this time with the conferences and speaking tours, they had to have performing arts people. So the Gold Brass Band, and of course, the New Hope Singers, a few of those people you may know. Then of course, the next big event was Yankee Stadium in 1976. Of course, the whole church movement was activated for that. We all came, we were wearing white overalls because of sweeping the streets and witnessing the people and inviting people to come out with poster boards and everything. And of course, we just had celebrated that, so you have a clear idea what happened. The big event took place, but it was still a very nervous time because actually many things were happening that was dangerous actually. And so just before Father came out, President Salonen, who was the church president at the time, was very nervous about Father's safety even going to the stage. I was invited back by New Fitch Photo to help photograph it. So I went with the Michael Brownlee, the leader, and I was helping him on the stage area. So President Salonen asked me to walk behind two Father out to the stage as a more of a little guard, even though I was kind of skinny. But I did my best, and then I was helping him. The person on the left, you may recognize him as the East Garden Security, Mike McDivitt. I want to speak one thing about the East Garden security guards. They are the most sacrificial. They worked hard, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Whether it was 20 below zero weather, 100-degree weather, they would stay up, patrol the grounds, guard troop parents, follow them wherever they were, sleepless nights and days, but they worked hard. So I want to we have to give them eternal praise and gratitude for their work. So I just did that. Now, as you know, it was a great victory, but there's still a lot of, Father wasn't totally satisfied. So at the celebration, he said we have to go to Washington Monument. And to even have a bigger crowd there and a much bigger victory. Now, of course, as you know, everybody got rejuvenated and rededicated ourselves for 40 days. We only have 40 days to put it on. And of course, as you know, it turned out to be a great success. I was actually asked to come back again to help. And they asked me to go to the top of the Lincoln Memorial and help with the fireworks. So, plus there's also some black ministers who were protesting out there against what we were doing. But main thing, it was a great success. We can hear actually Father speak, the speech all the way from the Lincoln Memorial. And was Father happy about that? He was ecstatic, very, very happy. But he continued on by going to Capitol Hill several times, speaking to the congressmen directly, congressmen and senators. But unfortunately, during President Carter's time, there was one congressman who didn't like us at all and tried to persecute us deeply, especially through Father's interpreter, Dr. Pak. His name was Donald Frazier. He tried to prove that we were working with the Korean CIA and all this and that and taking money, but actually Dr. Pak was able to prove to Congress that Donald Frazier actually was a traitor, that he was actually working directly with Moscow to overthrow the government of America. Dr. Pak won, Donald Frazier lost, and he never won an election after that. And true parents had absolute faith during this whole time. During this time, True Family were growing. They were singing at celebrations. They were playing sports with True Parents. Even the cameraman was playing with them, Shimiyama-san. And of course, when there's more, with celebrations and everything, there's always portraits. And portraits. And with birthday celebrations, there are more portraits. And with more children, there are more birthdays and birthdays. And of course, cakes. As you know, Father and Mother probably hold the world record for cutting cakes. They just, like someday they'll probably have count how many there were. And of course, with new births happening, during this time, 1978, I asked, Mother was pregnant, and I asked a Japanese sister, I was with the Original Products at the time, what should I do? She said, oh, just pray every night. So I prayed and prayed. So one morning, actually one night, I had a dream. This very special dream. Father was on a porch, and there's a little balcony here, and Father was sitting in the balcony, and there's thousands of people, brothers and sisters, out in the hall, out in the backyard, watching them. And he was holding a baby, dressed in blue. You know what that means? So he was playing with the baby like this, and every time he held the baby like this, big applause from all the brothers and sisters. You're screaming and hollering, yay, like this. And Father just kept playing and playing, and more applause, more applause. And a few hours after I woke up, Hyungjin was born, a boy. So I always have a special connection, but the very special dream I had about that. And of course, Mother was very dedicated. Mother always serving. And one time, right after she gave birth, Father said, oh, we have to go somewhere, visit some brother members. And Mother said, you don't know how difficult it is to give birth to a child. And Father just thought, yes, you're right. Please rest. So the next time, there was always the next time, Mother gave birth to a baby. Father was there in the delivery room for the first time to actually see the birth of his child and to be able to see what Mother went through. And this photograph is very special. True Father took this photograph. So, of course, Father, his love for Mother became even deeper because he was able to see. So please, husbands, you need to be with your wives during delivery, okay? She needs you. Of course, there's also more birthdays happening. And sometimes I would actually have a little help. Now, the baby's only 100 days old, doesn't quite sit up very well, so you always prop it with a lot of pillows. And one time, I was trying to get the photograph, and all of a sudden I felt something. I looked over close, and there was Father trying to inspire the baby to look up. Mothers sometimes will do that too. Now, everyone at East Garden thought this big security guy named Gerhard Piemöller was the biggest, strongest guy there. But nobody told Hyojin that. He's like about, what, 13, 14 years old here. Now, the other member that was very precious at East Garden was Mother's mother, Grandmother Han. Everybody called her Grandmother Han. She is very quiet, very loving. Everybody loved her very much. And now, of course, we all know her as Dame and him. And of course, there's always still more portraits happening, even more personal ones. And of course, Father during this time was always praying, always meditating. And he would go up to the holy ground at East Garden and contemplate what he needed to do next and making sure there's victories assured. But of course, because of the dangers out there, he couldn't really go out for exercise. He couldn't really do it. So he loved playing pool. And even some of the members would play there by playing football. This is Wampil Kim. Actually, he's throwing a pass to Hungzin, and Hungzin caught it. Now, I've never seen two brothers more loving to each other than Hyojin and Hungzin. They were always together, always, whether they're walking, talking, school activities, motorcycles, they were always together. The last time I saw Hungzin with Father and Mother were going to Korea for the anti-communist rallies in December '83, and both of them were there at the airport singing them off, and I had to deliver something to Reverend Kwok. And so that's the last time I saw them. They were walking out, talking to each other, and that was the last time I saw Hungzin. And the last city of the tour, I found out I had to go to the tour also. And the very last city was Gwangju, and we didn't know it, but there was an assassin there trying to get in. But the place was so full, he couldn't get in. But because of that, Hungzin actually gave his life. That's when he had the accident, and that prevented the assassin from getting in. But we didn't know it. We drove to Seoul that night. The next morning, we found out at the meeting, which was actually Unjin's birthday, that there was an accident. So right after True Parents had a special rally with all the Moon Clan people in Korea, they immediately went back to America. Now, of course, Father spoke at Belvedere almost every Sunday he could, and all the members were there. So you see that little doorway in the back on the right? One time I was there. The camera was very heavy at the time, and the big flash, and I was leaning against the frame of the door like this. All of a sudden, I felt something on my shoulder. I peeked around. Hungzin had his chin on my shoulder so he can look, because he was also a photographer, amateur photographer, so he was looking to find out what kind of angle I was getting. So I was very surprised. But Father always talked to members. They always sat on the floor, sometimes 2 hours, sometimes a lot longer. Now, the first time I went to East Garden. It was a very special event. It was September, I think 1980, and Father had just finished his speech. Mother had gone back to East Garden early because it was Youngjin's birthday, their son's birthday. And so Father finished his speech and everything. Yejin was still there, and all of a sudden, hey, today is my son's birthday. You're all invited. So that's 250 people. Yejin went. So she went to the telephone. Oh, man, Father just did. He just invited everybody over there. So what did Mother do? Well, she's very calm. They just called McDonald's and sent food over for everybody. So Father always talked, always laughing, but always serious. And of course, the thing I really miss most is his diagrams. Father was always writing. He had all these big diagrams on the ground, on the board. Sometimes he'd erase it again even with his hand, and keep doing more diagrams, some of which are like even mottos, very historic quotes and everything. And every once in a while, he'd also have a funny face. There it is. But even at a leaders meeting, he'd still be writing and always talking. Now, a lot of leaders, when Father wasn't there, leaders would come up and give speeches and sermons. But the most dedicated, of course, was Hyojin. He came. Even though he had worked all night long at the Manhattan Center with his music and restoration and work and everything, writing songs, he would still come for a short speech just to give a direct sermon to members to inspire them. Now, of course, during this time, we had always all these holy days. This is still when we had the holy gowns. Father and Mother prayed with their arms up. But eventually, after years of doing this, Mother's arm became very weak. And so after like a few minutes, it would start getting lower and lower. And eventually, one time, I had a monopod easier to photograph on. So they taped it up all in white and actually put it under her arm so she can rest it during one of the prayers. And one time, the lavalier mic in the ballroom in New York, so there's no way to record the voice. So I got up there with my hand mic, with a hand mic, the camera's here, and I squatted like this right in front of two parents. I held my hand out like that. And of course, it was one of those historic long speeches, the prayer, so it hurt. So, Father, I sort of missed those times with celebrations. First, there was a pledge ceremony, and of course, the main speech, but everybody was there. During this time, it was the 80s, Father got very serious with fishing, not because of the sport, but another reason was to find ways to serve and feed the world. And also, the oceans are probably the best place to meditate and pray because it's very clear, spiritually clear out there. So, and of course, sometimes Father would fish. So this was caught on a rod and reel, but then he created his other technique that he used at Cape Cod. Also, he learned to create a new way of making a net so he'd catch all the carp over at the Hudson River in Barrytown. And of course, the members had to go out, not just the brothers in these 28-foot boats that we made, but also the sisters, even the sisters' boat. And they caught one. It was a huge success. They would bring it in, take a lot longer than the brothers, but they limped back to port with a huge 800-pound fish. And of course, now, also during this time in the 70s, Father wanted to make sure the leaders were not only well-versed in the divine principle, but also in other religions, to study other religions. And so he created a Unification Theological Seminary, UTS. And it was a requirement. If you want to be a leader, you had to graduate from UTS. That was the requirement to be a leader. Now, of course, everyone had this other hope in mind, too. It's called the matchings. Yeah. So, for me, I photographed many matchings, but the most fun actually was the first one because we all knew each other. So it was a fantastic. Oh, like you just got matched to my team captain. Oh, you got matched to this person, great. And then sometimes it'd be, you got matched to him? So Father was amazing. Father was always focused on it. He would first give like an introduction to those, prepare them for the matching, what it is, why it's important, and then he'd start the matching process. And of course, I was matched as well, and we'll see if this works. Please turn up the volume on this one too.
Yeah.
37.
몇 살이에요, 몇 살? 아? 25이라고 그랬지. 아니야. 왜 하려잖아, 왜?
33살이다.
어? 애들에게 축복 받았겠지?
나중에 하면
집에 도망갈라?
여기 참석하지 마.
여기 남편 전화 왔습니다.
제일
엄마
정신
완전히
나오는구나 내가.
아주 그동안 정숙하게 말했습니다.
자, 이거.
빨리 해라. 그만.
You have a green card? Okay. It was a great job.
Actually, I had photographed all morning, and then we were masked, and then we went to Applebee's for like an hour, and then she went back to her Sega Times newspaper to tell everybody, and I went back inside to work. So it was a working matching. So then, of course, everyone, the blessing took place after that. Got bigger and bigger. And of course, Father was very serious of us creating heavenly families, and through the blessings we can do that. Also during this time, conference is still being held. Most of these gentlemen are Nobel Prize winners from the science conference. These scholars truly believed in two parents' visions and their goals. Another organization was a media. One was the News World magazine, News World newspaper in New York, which is actually forerunner of the Washington Times. And during the elections in 1980, Father says, the day of the election, you have to print Reagan landslide, Reagan landslide. Of course, everybody said, what? And newspapers were against that. Why you keep, there's making a joke of us and everything. But Reagan won a landslide out of it. And Ronald Reagan actually always had a Washington Times newspaper every morning in the White House. That's the first paper he would read. Was the Washington Times. But also during this time, we still had persecution. Father was being persecuted and with a court trial and everything. And this is at Foley Square. And then eventually became a religious freedom thing, which Injun him actually brought all these speeches. All the religious leaders, many of these are very famous, did this nationwide. And Father was so grateful that he actually met with many of them. And this was more the foundation for not only the ACLC, but also for the World Religious Assemblies, which religious leaders from all around the world came. And of course, during this time, Father and Mother were getting honored for their work, with doctorates, honorary doctorates, and everything. Now, the children also were doing something, especially Hyojin. Hyojin at this time was working hard at Manhattan Center. He was restoring it. He was trying to build into a world-class enterprise. This is in the studio. This is actually his first band. Joe Longo's there, and of course, that's Eve's loving eternal husband there, as you know. But he worked hard all the time. And many times, Father would have special guests at East Garden. Many would especially from Korea, be politicians, be religious leaders, even police chiefs. And after he would speak to them and give gifts and give them words of encouragement, he'd actually walk on top of the hill and actually wave goodbye to them. Of course, the lady behind True Mother is my favorite lady. So, then actually one time, Mother actually invited all the children to East Garden to give a little party and speech and everything. Of course, they only lasted like a few minutes on her speech, but she had them all line up, and one of them came up and she gave a little gift. She said, "Who's this? Who's your father?" And so she just like this and everything. And eventually Charles patted on his back and says, "Ken Owens." That's my daughter Julie. And everybody looked at me. So Mother gave her a little thing in cheek. Now, Father said, after Washington Monument, the next big goal was Moscow. We must go to Moscow. That's what it, but it took 14 years. And the first part was Hun Suk-nim was invited to dance as a prima ballerina at the Kirov Ballet as a guest soloist. They did Swan Lake there. And Dr. Pak invited me to help photograph it with Andrew Kessler to help with translation and everything. And it was a great success, but I was very nervous because actually the North Koreans were there. They found out who we were. And they tried to kidnap Dr. Pak. They came in the middle of the night. "Oh, come into our party, yay!" No. And even they followed Hun Suk-nim around. She had to be very careful. And so afterwards, we went by not just a regular train to Moscow to set up for a media conference which Father would come. It was actually only where the party members rode on that train. So we were able to get on that. But because of that, the media conference took place, and Father and Mother were able to come, and we were able to go inside the Kremlin, and they were able to meet with Gorbachev, to talk to Gorbachev and actually convince him spiritually that the only way to save Russia was to disband the Soviet Union. And of course, a few months later, he did that. So actually, because of that, Gorbachev is a very historical person. And of course, he wanted to go to, Father then went to North Korea. We were supposed to go with him, but Kim Il-sung actually didn't want Americans to come because he was afraid of his own people about us. So only Father came. But it was a very nervous time because Father wasn't sure. As soon as he walked off the plane, they may have wanted to shoot him right there. He wasn't sure he was coming back. But because of the great victory that he had with Kim Il-sung, then he was able to come back and arrive in China with big smiles. And just as he was walking out the plane, it started snowing. And so when he went back to the hotel, he was able to get all these pictures with Kim Il-sung and the tour of Father's house and everything. And he just laid everything on the floor and showed everybody there. They were just so happy. And of course, he also laid the foundation for a Panda car project we had in Korea and China at that time. And also Mother went there eventually for speaking. But their tours kept going and going. Sometimes to be sightseeing, but it was a lot of work. And it'd be just very long, very tiring. But Father just kept smiling. no matter how long the trip. And even on, members would come on there. Actually, this is the person who started the church in Hawaii, Bruce Brown. He's there now. This is on top of the archway in St. Louis, a little portrait there. And of course, the last was speaking tour was in Washington, D.C., where all the ministers came. But not only on the stage, but the whole room was full of ministers, all in special robes and everything. So it was very, very exciting. And of course, Father had great victories. One thing about the tie, I didn't want Father to look bad in the video or the photography. So I developed a little system that if his tie was crooked, I would sort of put my little sign like this down, and he would see it, and he would straighten out his tie. So that's why his tie is almost always straight in his pictures and videos. And of course, this is New Jersey. That's actually some of the Korean War veterans on the right. This picture was at the end of the Washington, D.C. speech. I thought when I saw it, oh, his eyes are closed. But actually, that's a nice picture, it turned out. It's a very loving picture. But they always had speaking, always waving, especially big smiles, always special waving. And then eventually, in the early 90s, after the Women's Federation started, then Mother started doing her speaking tours, and she went around the world to all different countries, and with great success and everything. I went to South America and Asia during her tour, and at the end, arrived back in Korea, and Mother wanted pictures. So she told me to go to Japan, make some albums, and make an album for her father. So I went back, I arrived at Hanamdong, where they lived, and when I saw her, I held the book up like this, and she was just standing there flipping the pages like that as I was standing. And then she took the album and took it to the dining room where Father was, and we looked at the pictures there, and she was playing this and this and this. So they were all very, very happy. So Father was always smiling, but always brought big victory with all these speeches, especially at the United Nations he spoke. He spoke there several times and even had a blessing there. Now, one of his historical speeches was in Hawaii in 2007. This person is very special. He's a pastor on the Big Island, and his name is Pastor Norman Keanaina. He is a direct descendant of King Kamehameha, who united all the islands. Now, because of that, he's actually a royal descendant. Basically, he's the king of Hawaii. So what he did, he loved two parents so much, they loved him so much, that he gave his royal robe, which is, and put it on Father, gave him this special greeting. It's more like a handshake. It's even more loving with the foreheads together. And now, true father and true mother are the king and queen of Hawaiian Islands. And of course, they went to the Capitol building, to where the now religious people and politicians are able to have a special ceremony in the Capitol building there. And of course, during this time, the Middle East was still having problems, so Father wanted, actually Dr. Young and Reverend Jenkins sort of organized all this, where we have tours, people going there. First it was a pilgrimage to Rome, and then Israel, and then we just focused on Israel. But the biggest main event was to be able to have, the Father wanted was to have Jesus crowned as the King of Israel, finally. And in a park that was actually televised nationwide, Jesus was finally crowned as the King of Israel. And during this time, then Father had to also do finishing his blessings, worldwide blessing. And one time I had to do a portrait during a birthday ceremony. They're just sitting there. Oh, you look like honeymooners. You're still honeymooners. And Father says, yes, honeymooners. So Father's always loved that. And of course, the blessings were still happening bigger and bigger and worldwide. And in 2006, the palace opened up in Korea. This is actually a very long, hard day for me. I was wiped out at the end of the day, but it's a very great historical event. Someday, all of you have to go and visit your children, everybody. And of course, Father and Mother are truly happy at this event. It's a worldwide event. Even Army helicopters were passing by, watching it as during the ceremony. I remember that. And of course, every time two parents came home to East Garden, they would have the children and the grandchildren bow, and they have a little popo time. This is popo time. And all the children and grandchildren come up and kiss two parents. And so, true parents, I'm not a grandparent yet. My daughter said they're working on it, but I can't wait. True parents love their grandchildren. And of course, sometimes be upstairs in the private room and take portraits up there. And actually, this was the true parents' wedding anniversary. And during the leaders' conference, he went up there for a snack, and Mother just gave him his jacket as a wedding gift, wedding anniversary gift. So she asked to be able to take a picture outside. And of course, they always sang together, as you know, loved to sing. So many portraits. But the picture I really tried to get, wasn't easy, was these. Because sometimes I would hear myself, that I get it, I would always go, yes! And of course everybody would hear me, but, yes. So Father, very, very close. So do you think Father thinks you can do your best? He wants you to do your best. So, yes. So, what does God and true parents feel? What does God feel about true parents? And what does God want us to do? So, also in Berrytown, I had a revelation from God about this. We just did parallels of history. So, I wrote down, they asked study after that, so I wrote down, what is wrong? Why can't I feel God's heart, true parent's heart, and the heart of an innocent child? And then a big rush came through me. And this is what God said. Why can't you realize how hurt I've been, seeing you suffer, hearing your screams and feeling your deep wounds? Why can't you realize that there's a barrier between us, a barrier of death, a spiritual death? I can't stand the smell of it. I never have and I never will. It's been with me ever since you left me, and you never realized how much it was really hurting. I love you so much, and I cry from the deepest depths of my heart to you. But it's so hard to let you know that I'm crying, that I'm shedding tears of sorrow, tears of misery. I can't cry out like you can. I can't let loose the flood of all my tears of love out of my heart to pour over each one of you. I feel so alone and so helpless. I want to cry out to you, scream to you, but all I can do is cry in my heart the tears of a lonely, rejected, broken father for his long-lost children. But it is so difficult for you to understand, for you to be where I am, to feel the weight of my tear-filled heart that carries the overburdened responsibility of my children's lives, to know that my precious ones, whom I brought into the world, have been and are suffering under the terrible pain of a dust-filled death. You would cry so much for just one tear of my sorrow. I feel your tear-stained hearts, but you can't feel my universal suffering heart, which is so sensitive to even the slightest pain, the slightest bit of sadness. Now my son is with you. Only he can show you how my heart really feels. He knows me so well because he knows how I feel and how all of you feel. Oh, how I want to make you happy, but I can't with this heavy, miserable heart that I now have. Please look to him. Please listen to him. Please feel him. You see him, you see me. You hear him, you hear me. You feel him, you feel me. You cry with him, you cry with me. He is your father, you are his children. But I am his father, so all of you are my children. I don't want to see my family suffer. I don't like seeing my children cry. I cry when you cry, but even more so because I made you. You came from me. I want to love you with all my heart. I want you to be my children again. I want you to feel joy. I want to love you and I want you to love me. I want to become one with all of you, to embrace you and cry tears of love together as father and children, as one family. That is all you've ever wanted. That is all I've ever wanted. I am praying for you. Remember when I said there's actually no future in history? But there is, because Father is uniting. The future in history is being connected because of our true parents. He's connected. They are connecting the past, present, and into the future, creating a new future. So each moment true parents are here is very precious. So you have to do your best to attend to them and love them while they're still here. So first generation, us people. The new book of Acts is still being written. You're still part of it. You've written a lot of it already. You sacrificed and accomplished so much in the past, but there's so much to do that even though there's like no such thing as retirement. So please continue to do your best. And most importantly, write your memoirs, write your testimonies. You have many experiences. Some of you have had deeper experiences than I had with your parents. So how you joined the church, about your spiritual parent, what you've gone through in the church, the different experiences, but most importantly, your experiences with true parents and why you love them so much. Second generation, no matter how old you are, your parents sacrificed their youth for attending true parents. They went through many difficulties, a lot of them, and they did great things. So please learn from them. They have tremendous hope for you. Even when they were still young, single, Father gave them so much hope about the blessing and about what kind of children they were going to have. So even before they were even matched and blessed, they were already loving you already. So please cherish this time with your parents, and please understand their hearts as much as possible. And please be blessed to a second generation and create your own beautiful, blessed families. And lastly, the new guests, new members. We of the first generation know what you're going through because we were being guided by Spirit World, even though in our ancestors, even though we didn't know it. So please continue to pray. Please continue to understand and learn, because we went through the same thing. I was able to be with them for 33 years, directly with them, photographing them in public events and private events. So you're on the right track. You're on the right track. So please keep going. So brothers and sisters, let's continue loving and attending our true parents, and we'll complete God's kingdom. May God bless you and your families. Thank you very much.